questions in the Q&A so far from Ellen. The first one is, are there any regulations for removing harmful species if it is not dangerous to us? For example, snakeheads, clown knifefish, goldfish, etc.
Read that again.
Are there any regulations for removing harmful species if it is not dangerous to us? Snakeheads, clown knifefish, goldfish.
Yes, ultimately, we would like to be able to get rid of all the non-natives, but you know, that's unfortunately, by the time, especially with fish, by the time you find them where you know they're there, they're already well established, and getting rid of them is not necessarily practical. In a perfect world, sure. Again, the other thing what we try to do is education, outreach, and find some kind of a way to market, if you will, that fish. Like again, snakeheads are they're a great sport fish. They're a lot of fun to catch, and they're great table fare too. So that's kind of what we do with them now. Now, in this pond that we just found them a couple weeks ago, we do have the option of going in there and killing that pond out and restocking it and starting it all over again. If we find that those fish are, the snakeheads are elsewhere other than just that pond, that's going to be our next discussion with my team here in the Lakeland office.
On snakeheads, we have another question. Can Sarasota get too cold for the snakeheads?
That's what we always thought. But these fish have apparently been there for at least 3 or 4 years. That adult that I was holding was probably a 4-year-old, and we found some juveniles, 2-month-old. And earlier, some other researchers from the University of Florida had gone down there. That's how we found out about them, and they had found several balls of fry. So Sarasota used to get too cold, but apparently, at least this one pond, not so much anymore. I did pull some water temperature data from a creek that runs right by this particular pond, and going back to 2007, those waters there just have, in that time frame anyway, have stayed just warm enough that that snakeheads can survive. Yay.
Yeah, climate change is doing great things for all the exotics.
Yep, that was my thought exactly. Was okay. Here's a good example of global warming.
Still on the snakehead, I'll get back to Ellen's other question, but Diana would like to know if the pond with the snakehead has public access.
No, it does not. Nope, it is a retention pond in a office/industrial area. So.
All right. Back up to Ellen's second question. We are wondering, I'm also curious if it's possible to get specimens of these invasive fish, create that 3-chromosome situation, and introduce a population which can't breed, ultimately cutting down a population.
I don't know if anybody's tried that. That's not a bad thought. The only thing I would say is most of our established non-native fishes are well established, put it that way. So I don't know if that would, if doing the triploid thing would have any impact, at least within our geologic time.
My favorite question.
That's gonna be a good discussion though, because I'm gonna bring that up with the team.
Yeah. We have another question, my favorite one so far. If we find a walking catfish walking down the street, is it fair game to invite him to dinner? I'm assuming that's about regulation, but maybe also tell us if it's good table fare.
Well, let's see. If you invite him to dinner, what are you going to serve him? Just puppies and grits? They're not, I mean, goodness gracious, everything has some level of edibility. In other words, if you're hungry enough, you'll eat anything. They're not great table fare. So, and certainly if somebody wants to try it and get back to me if you find a good recipe, let me know.
But on the regulation side, I'm right to think that none of these are regulated game species that would have a take limit or any protection.
No, they're not all non-natives. There's no bag limit. There's no size limit. So again, catch and keep as many as you can.
Great. We have a question about hatcheries. Patagonia came out with a documentary about hatchery salmon and how they're making wild Pacific salmon disappear. I know that FWC has hatcheries for redfish and snook. So I guess it's a question about the safety of hatchery reared fish in wild population, maybe.
I can't speak for the salmon industry, but I can speak for our hatcheries here. We have the redfish hatchery down in Manatee County. Our main hatchery is for freshwater fish is up in Sumter County, up in Richland Green Swamp area. And both of our hatcheries there are very, very cognizant of the genetic component. For largemouth bass, we found out, maybe 15 plus years ago, number one, that the Florida largemouth bass is a genetically distinct species. It looks almost identical to what we call the northern largemouth bass, which is found all the way from, southern Canada all the way down into North Florida. But the Florida largemouth bass is completely different. It gets bigger, it grows faster, it's more aggressive, and we protect that genetic integrity of that fish very tightly. Not only is it genetically distinct, there's also 5 different regions where the genetics within the Florida largemouth bass are slightly different. And so we no longer allow transfer of fish, say, from Hillsborough County down to West Palm Beach, because the fish are just different enough, particularly when it comes to growth and feeding, that they've got all these little genetic cues that, okay, at this size, at this place, where I'm born, I can eat, say, Daphne, all right? If I take a fish from Hillsborough County and move it down to West Palm Beach, where the water's warmer, where the fish spawn earlier, and have a different growth rate, those fish from Hillsborough County are always going to be behind the 8 ball, if you will. The survivability is going to be low, the growth rate is going to be low, and ultimately they're probably going to die out. But at the same time, they'll spawn with the native fish down in that area and mess up those genetics. So and I know the redfish people do the same thing. So we're really cautious and I think very professional about how and where and when we stock fish. That was a long answer. I hope that answered the question.
I think that was a pretty good answer. Comment in the Q&A if you have a clarifying question on that one. Ooh, I've got a bunch more coming in here. Let's go to the first question from Manny. Does the ornamental tropical fish hatchery, do they release any fish?
Not on purpose, but yes, we do have some of the fishes that we have established are from fish farms, and they're regulated pretty tightly. Believe it or not so much by us, but by the Department of Agriculture. Ag actually oversees the fish farming industry, because about 20 years ago, there was a politician who thought it made more sense, because it said fish farms, that because they're farms, quote unquote, they should be under the direction of agriculture. And so they actually took most of the authority away from us, because prior to that, all fish farms were looked over by us, and they took that away and shoved it over to ag.
Right. Another question from Ellen. She knows of a pond that has large plecos in Sims Park in Port Richey, many over a foot long.
Yep.
Is there a good way to fish for them? I know spears work, but that's fraught with regulations in freshwater, unfortunately.
Yeah, bow fishing and gigging are actually the most effective method. They're not caught on hook and line very often because they're a filter feeder. They actually don't have a stomach. They have a long coiled intestine, and they suck up mouthfuls of muck and scrape algae off of rocks. And because their food sources, it does not have a lot of energy in it. It moves through their digestive process really slow so that they can extract all the nutrients and energy that are there. So there's not really a good bait for them. So hook and line is not, unless you're trying to snatch, hook them, or snag them, hook and line isn't going to do it. So gigging and bow fishing where it's allowed are the most effective method.
Great. We have a question more general. What is FWC doing about the sewage crisis in our estuaries? It seems to be a constant problem. I'm going to guess that's more of a DEP issue.
Yeah, that's coastal, and that is not my area of expertise. So I can't. I don't think I can answer that.
I can at least speak to the budget this year, having more on septic remediation at least. That was good news. I remember seeing in the budget. Of course, I haven't seen it since the pandemic. So. All right. Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll take a quick break. I think I got all of them, but just post it again if I missed your question. Right, I think we're set. So thanks, Paul Thomas with FWC. That was a great presentation, and judging by the questions, everybody was really interested.
Okay, cool. Thanks, everybody. Looking forward to the next two.